This is your Insurance Corner, and we'll be right back after these short messages.
Hi, I'm Pat Cameron.
Ron Pecorini.
Matt Rosenberg.
We are the hosts of Sports Weekly every Saturday on WLCD 101.5 FM.
Every week we will have lively discussions and debate about the latest in national and collegiate sports.
Sports Weekly will have the latest scores and highlights from the high school sports scene in southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois.
It's 3 hours of in-depth coverage of the world of sports.
So grab a cup of coffee and join us.
That's Sports Weekly every Saturday from 8 to 11 right here on WLCD 101.5 FM.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
My name is Teresa Barber. I was in the United States Navy, and I served overseas in the Middle East and Africa. Early on in my career, I had a commander that taught our suicide prevention training, and the very next day, he took his own life. 90% of suicide attempts involving a gun are fatal. My way of continuing my service is to help protect my community by being a responsible gun owner and by storing firearms safely. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Hey, it's John and Heidi from the John and Heidi Show.
On Wednesday, we visit with Joey Travolta. That's John's brother, and I'm excited to chat with him. He's a filmmaker, and he's got a new film out just in time for Autism Awareness Month, Lights, Camera, Friendship on the Spectrum.
It's all happening on the Wednesday edition of the John and Heidi Show.
Gotta like it.
Are you ready?
It's got a good beat.
Are you ready?
Don't tell me you're not tapping your foot. I see you. 2, 3.
I saw you were with them last night. I saw you were with them last night. Don't burn the bridge, burn the paper.
Yeah, that's Don't Burn the Bridge, Burn the Paper by Engaging Time, coming to a venue near you soon. Well, soon is kind of a relative term, Sean. One of my guitars is in the shop. Not sure when I'm going to get it back, but it broke. Not physically with the wood, although it did. It suffered from... my words, dehydration, humidity, in other words, took effect on the wood, which then caused the neck to have problems. The bridge, which holds the strings at the bottom of the guitar, had some issues. So it might be a few weeks before I see it. And then my other guitar, which I've had for almost 40 years, the frets are going to get replaced. They're still the original frets. It has not suffered the same diabolical conditions that my other guitar, which is far more expensive. But it's going to take a few weeks for that guitar to get fixed. So Engaging Time may not be hitting the ropes anytime soon. We'll see. Maybe in a month or two. But we are back. This is your Insurance Corner. My name is Bill Miksch. I'm president of WDMA Financial Group. This is 101.5 FM, WLCB, Slade's Corner, Wisconsin. I'm here with Sean Hauser. Say hello, Sean.
Hello, Bill.
Well, you're supposed to say hello, Sean.
Good night, Gracie.
Oh, my God, I'm too old. So, all right, we're back. We're talking about powers of attorney, folks. And so we just kind of define a general power and a durable power. basically the big difference is general powers cease when the principal becomes incapacitated or dies. A durable power continues on with incapacity, but does complete itself when the principal passes away. And then you've got two different types of powers of attorney: property and health care. You can identify the same person or two different people to manage a person's powers of attorney. You might want to pick one because they're very good with numbers and making sure the bills get paid, and you can trust them not to invade your bank account. And the other one is healthcare. The same person may be very competent and skilled in that level, or the principal trusts them enough that they can handle both. Or you get a separate person that says, in the event of my health, I want this other person to be my agent for me. And the same rules apply. Incapacity, they are in full bloom. Upon death, the powers of attorney cease to exist. The agent no longer has any rights to anything. Now, the agent may become the trustee of the person's estate. I'm digressing a little bit here, but it's worth mentioning that power of attorney ceases. Then you go to the bank and you say, hey, listen, I need to write some checks. The banker's going to look at you cross-eyed and go, where's your death certificate? And we need to see that you are a trustee on the estate so we can give you access. So, folks, there are certain rules that have to be followed. Otherwise, the people that you need to engage to manage the decedent's affairs are going to be collapsing all around you because you didn't put together the right kind of pieces to make the puzzle fit. You have to make sure you follow the rules. And by the way, one other thing about that, every state has its own rules about powers of attorney. Most of them are very close, but some states are different. So if you're going to move from Illinois to Indiana, or Illinois to Texas or Florida, wherever, you may want to just check in with an attorney of the state that you're moving to make sure your powers of attorney are up to speed, your will is up to speed, your trust is up to speed, because when you have an incapacity or a death, the state in which you reside in has the trump card of what the rules are supposed to be. So don't just assume because I have this, I'm good, it'll travel with me wherever I'm going. That is not necessarily the case. If you move, you want to make sure that the rules in the state in which you now officially reside in are being accommodated and followed. Because if they're not, the will, the powers of attorney, and I don't know about the trust, I'm not a legal expert in this particular area, but I suspect at a worst case, they're challengeable, and in a worst case, they're void. So you want to pay attention to that.
One thing I wanted to add too, Bill, is you talked about going to going to your bank and saying, hey, I need to be able to write some checks on this account. I'm power of attorney. You should also check with the financial institution that holds your assets to see, do they have their own document to complete? Because there was an article I was reading about someone who had power of attorney and their mother became incapacitated. They went with their duly notarized, filed, registered, etc., power of attorney that they had written up, and they said, no, we don't honor that. You have to you had to have ours completed.
Yeah.
And so they had to get into it with that company, and then ultimately the court had to decide because the person who had granted the power of attorney couldn't make any decisions. They were in a coma.
Mm-hmm.
So then they had to give this person right to pay the bills, or else that person would have. But, again, you had to fight for it. So if you have your assets concentrated, like at a Schwab or at a Fidelity or something like that, ask them what they need, because the form could be different.
I'm just making a note here. Investment house may have separate forms.
Correct.
Right. That's a great point. That's a really good point, because a lot of us have brokerage accounts and investment accounts with, name your company, whether it's Robinhood, Acorn, Schwab, Merrill Lynch, Vanguard, whoever, and you may have to check in with them to find out if you've got is my power of attorney that I put together on LegalZoom or with my attorney good, or do you have your own separate form? Just on that subject matter, and I'm going to digress here, but it is related. I'm right now in the middle of a claim problem for one of my clients that this person happens to be in an HMO, and HMOs are a little bit different breed in terms of who pays the claim and who do you talk to. It may very well end up being that we need a HIPAA form from the insurance company. We may need a HIPAA form from the what's called the Individual Practice Association, or the IPA, because they may not honor the HIPAA form we gave to the insurance carrier, and you may need one for the hospital because they have their own form. So to your point, Sean, this is one of those things that you don't know what you don't know, and ask somebody who either should know or knows where to find the answer. Because when you are looking for answers, the last thing you need is to have some know-it-all behind the glass saying, "I'm sorry, sir, we can't help you. You don't have the right form." And now you got to go to court to fight them.
Well, you might find yourself up a body of water in a floating floating vehicle without a means of propulsion, as they say.
Yeah, let me introduce you to my friend Mr. Soprano.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when 100 years ago, when I worked in retirement plan operations, people would come to the window and they would say, "Oh, this is so and so. They're the executor of the estate. I need to get them some money distributed." And so we would go back and pull the documentation around the retirement account and find out that they had designated beneficiaries and that our contract didn't allow us to talk to the person who said that they were the executor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's some pretty irate people.
Mm-hmm.
And, don't think you can yell and intimidate someone, because ultimately they're thinking at the end of the day, if I, leave the company uncovered to some sort of risk or liability.
Right. It is a very legal process, folks, that this follows. This is not just, pulling up a cartoon character or a crayon, a coloring book, and writing down some words and going, okay, it's done. It's not that simple. And to Sean's point, you may need other forms from other entities. You mentioned the investment house. You just mentioned a bank, where the bank has its own forms that they probably filled out when the accounts were set up, and it lays out who the transfers on death are, or who's got access and who doesn't. So this is critical information, folks, that I guarantee you, unless you've already been down this road and you think you have it handled, it's very possible that I could find a hole or two or 10 that you haven't plugged yet. And a good example would be, do you know if your investment house has their own form? Do you know if the hospital has their own form? Do you know if the bank has their own form? Because if they do, and they won't let you talk, even though you've got all this other legal stuff that's handled, you may end up having to take them to court, and that could take months to resolve itself if you're not careful. Or at a worst case, you're going to engage legal fees out of your own pocket to get to where you want to go, because somebody else didn't do their job, either because they didn't know, in most cases they didn't know. And I wonder, I'm going to ask my estate planning attorney tomorrow about this very thing, about the investment house, about the bank. When he's consulting with clients, and in some cases they're my clients, where does this come into play? Does this even come up? Or do you just tell them POA is good no matter where you take it, and then it's not the moment you show up at the investment house or the bank and go, here's my form, and they're like, oh, I don't care. Where's our form? Everybody has their own form, because everybody's going to do a CYA for what they're trying to do for their own organization. And it is frustrating that it has to be that way, But folks, unfortunately, it's that way because somewhere along the way, somebody got screwed or somebody got taken. And so the rules got tighter so as to make sure the people that were entitled to whatever they're supposed to have were going to get what is due them.
Yeah, I just found that article I was reading about from a bank, and it might be the one that Rob Gronkowski wants to become a member of, or Sam Elliott's a member of.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that they could not speak to the power of attorney because he hadn't completed their POA.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is 6 months ago. It may have changed since then, but it makes sense. And the other thing I think you and I have talked about 100 times is you don't just call up Charles Schwab and say, I'm the power of attorney for this guy, for this person. I need to speak to somebody right away. If you're going through all the care to put that thing down, you might put down what office you work with, what broker you work with, who your banker might be, or what branches you deal with, because first of all, they got to find you. Second of all, they got to vet you. And third of all, then they're going to service you. And you might find you get better service from the person that has worked with the grantor all along, and then step in and once you've been vetted to provide you that service.
I can tell you with my bank, Katie is my go-to. She knows me. She knows. All I have to do is say hey, and she knows who I am. And then she fixes a problem or takes care of me or does something that I'm asking her to do. If something happened to me, Sally could easily walk in and go, I'm Bill's wife. We've met a couple times. And Katie's met her, so that wouldn't be a big deal. And Katie would go, okay, what do we need to do? You know, she may be able to move past the paperwork because we don't know, we don't need it because she knows who she's dealing with. Now, that you make a good point, Sean, and I'm going to digress here for a second, but we're going to talk about HIPAA for a second, but it's in the same vein of having somebody call up and say, hey, I'm the POA for somebody. If you and I was calling on your behalf, and you were on the phone and identifying yourself as Sean Hauser to XYZ Hospital, and I'm there to, figure out a claim problem on your behalf, and you engage me to do it because you're over your head and you're already very upset about how the thing is going. Gotcha. How did they actually know it's you?
That's a good question to ask, because you and I have both sat across from clients, and we need to make a phone call because we can sling the lingo. We know what they're going to ask for, and we'll say, "Well, do you have Mr. Hauser right here?" And you'll say, "Yes, I do." And then I'll say, "Hi, I'm Sean." Okay. Now it used to be, "Well, do I have the authority to talk to Mr. Mix about your account?" Yes, you do. Can you confirm your address? Trust me, that's an easy thing to find out. But now I've gone through things where, like working with my spouse, where they'll say, I'm going to send you a link, click on that, and then you have to go through and vet yourself, kind of like you do online where it says, 221 East Main Street, have you ever been associated with this address?
Right.
So things that you would know. So they're getting better at that, because here's something that happened, and it's not the same as me giving a verbal okay over the phone, but those dial-in lines for people that are hearing impaired? There was a lot of fraud several years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, because people would just dial up using those. Are you Mr. Account Holder? Why, yes, I am. You're Mrs. Account Holder? Sure, why not? You don't know. How can you tell?
Exactly.
And, so it's getting tougher to do that, but sometimes they will still take a verbal.
Yeah, and again, it's, if I'm calling on behalf of Sean, but Sean actually works for me, and the person who I'm actually calling on behalf of told me, do what you have to do. I don't want to be involved in this thing. Just find somebody to pretend they're me. I'm going to be making sure that I've got name, rank, social security number, date of birth, last known address, and if there's
a female voice, if you're calling about a female.
Absolutely. And if they're doing
it can be done. So
yeah,
that's why I say a lot of times They may not give all the information, or they may say, look, I've got to verify you through some other, usually runs through the credit bureaus, where they pull some sort of financial facts about you that you have to say whether or not, I've been associated with this address, or this, I had this auto loan or this credit card or something.
Yeah, so
Getting tougher.
Yeah, I'm glad they're doing some extra. I'm noticing this with insurance companies and some other entities where they're now sending codes to verify, and you've got 15 seconds to respond. Or maybe the code will die out in 15 minutes or something to that effect. So, yeah, but I just went through this the other day, and I didn't pretend. But I asked them at the end of it, I said, do you actually know it's her? I mean, it is her. I can attest to it, but if this phone call's recorded, I'm fine with that. But are you sure? How do you know? And there was a pregnant pause for a moment, because they're like, oh, yeah, I guess.
They don't want to answer that, because then you could come back and say, well, I had all this money stolen and it was because of your bad practices or whatever. But, sometimes they can do that verification, but there's people that this is their job. They're really good at it.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of things like LifeLock and account locks and things like that are being used, because, it's doable.
Yep. So what? So we talked about what the powers of attorney are. Who should have them? Anybody who's 18 and older. And this is going to shatter some things about parents that are sending their kids to college. Folks, they're 18. They're 18. That means they're of age. They can act on their behalf, on their own behalf. Daddy and mommy might be taking care of them financially, but the power of attorney that you have as a parent has potentially been eviscerated, because your child is now an adult by definition. So your adult child should have a power of attorney and identify the person that they want to act on their behalf in the event of incapacity or sickness or accident. So anybody 18 and older should have one. Can a power of attorney be changed? Yes. However, it does not eliminate, if you make a change to a power of attorney, the other one is still in existence unless the new POA specifically says, and I'm paraphrasing here, the power of attorney that was drafted in February 2nd, 1972 is now void. Something to that effect. You have to be very specific.
That person by name.
Yes,
yep.
yes.
Got it.
So you can make the change, but don't just, I've got a new power of attorney. Well, what happened to the other one? You start looking at the language and go, they both kind of say the same thing. There are different agents here representing you. I don't know which one, so none of them are good.
If you'd prefer, I'd not chime in so much, but that doesn't just apply to power of attorneys. If you're writing in for a retirement account, a lot of times you designate beneficiaries on an IRA or a Roth or whatever, on a 401k, etc. And what you need to do with beneficiaries is the same thing. Say, I appoint, my spouse, my son, and my daughter as equal beneficiaries, and then you have a fight with your son and you just want your wife and your daughter, you need to say, I want my wife and my daughter to be my beneficiaries, and exclude previously designated blah, 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 because you might get away with it, but if somebody wants to challenge that, they can say, well, you just made a mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And there's another piece of paper that says the other three were on there and now there's only two. That may be challengeable in court without that extra phrase, folks. So this is a legal thing. I say this all the time. Rates don't pay claims, contracts do. Same thing here. This is a contract, ostensibly. So what can an agent of a durable power of attorney not do? Any guesses, Sean? What can they not do?
I don't they can't grant subsequent power or contingent power, can they?
No, they cannot transfer power of attorney. If you made me power of attorney and then I transfer it over to Kelly because I don't want to do this, I can't do that.
Okay. Other than that, I can't think of anything.
So can't transfer authority. You can't not write a will on behalf of the principal. Now, that makes sense if they're incapacitated. If they've got a power of attorney but never did a will, I can't sit down and let's say Sally's got dementia. I can't sit down and say, okay, this is Sally's will. Ain't going to work because it's got to be signed by her and witnessed by a third party, not a family member. This is why I'm not a big fan of the online stuff. And for those of you listening that have done that, I wish you all the best. Just hope you didn't make a mistake. You cannot take money from the account of the person that you're managing without specific authority to do such. But the power of attorney does not, as a general rule, allow you to take money, in particular, pay yourself. It's one thing if you're going to pay a bill. It's another one if you're going to try to pay yourself. That's a big no-no. Make decisions after the person dies. Cannot, and it's because the power of attorney passes when the principal passes away. Nursing homes, I said this before, nursing homes and medical providers cannot overwrite the power of attorney. So agents cannot write a will, take money from accounts, particularly on their own behalf, or make decisions after death, or give the power of attorney to another person. We talked about revocation, but let me talk about a challenge to a power of attorney. Let's say that one of the siblings did not agree with the way in which I was managing somebody's affairs. They could actually challenge it, but they're going to have to come with specifics about what they don't like what I'm doing. They can't just say, well, he's not making good decisions. They have to show that I'm being abusive, that I'm stealing money. They have to show some kind of concrete evidence that I'm doing something wrong. And they have to be able to approve what you're doing. The last thing I just want to touch on before we go to the end of the show here, Sean, is agents cannot be liable for nursing home bills. The nursing home bills are still going to be the priority of the patient, not the power of attorney. The power of attorney has the ability to pay the bills, but they're not responsible for the bills. That's the critical thing. And some people might try to go down that rat hole. Good luck with that. They're not going to win that case. So before we go, I've got a message I want to share. When tomorrow, and it's entitled, When Tomorrow Starts Without Me. When tomorrow starts without me, please try to understand that an angel came and called my name and took me by the hand. The angel said my place was ready in heaven far above, and that I'd have to leave behind all those I dearly love. But when I walked through heaven's gates, I felt so much at home, for God looked down, smiled at me, and told me, welcome home. So when tomorrow starts without me, don't think we're far apart, for every time you think of me, I'm right there in your heart. And Sean, the reason I pulled that today is because in my family, in my extended family, including my friend Barb Sable, I've lost 1, 2, 3, count 4 people that I know in the last 4 months. Mm-hmm. And so know that you're not alone, folks. Be well. Sean, I'll look forward to seeing you and Kelly on Saturday. We'll touch base and figure out where. In the meantime, no show next week, folks. I'm traveling. So, Sean, you got dispensation. You got a day off.
Okay.
That big salary I pay you.
Right.
And so with that, this is 101.5 FM WLCB, Slade's Corner, Wisconsin. My name is Bill Miksch. That's Sean Hauser. This is your Insurance Corner. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.